They say the war ended. But when I look at the sky, I don't believe it. The clouds hang lower than they used to, gray and bruised, as if the heavens themselves were burned and never healed. The rivers run black, carrying ash instead of fish, and the forests, what's left of them, whisper with voices that don't belong to the wind. We were promised peace. Instead, the world twisted. The first time I saw one of the creatures, I thought it was just a starving man crawling from the ruins. His skin sagged like wet paper, and his eyes glowed with something that was not hunger but hatred. He made a sound, half scream, half laughter, and others joined in from the treeline. That was when I understood. The war had ended, but something else had begun. The facility keeps us alive, or at least that's what they tell us. Thick concrete walls, towers with automated guns, food rations measured to the gram. We huddle inside and pretend we're building something better. They call it the healing project. But every night, I hear them scratching at the fences. Their claws drag over the steel like nails over bone. Sometimes they scream our names. Sometimes they sound like the voices of the people we lost. And yet, I can't stay inside forever. The air grows stale in the tunnels, and my lungs ache for something real. So I step out. I stare at the broken trees and the shadows moving between them. Every time, the same question gnaws at me. Did the creatures crawl out of the war, birthed from the weapons we unleashed? Or were they always here, waiting for us to break the world so they could finally come out and claim it? Either way, the truth doesn't matter, because the world outside is not the same. The war ended with silence. No parades, no speeches, just a quiet too deep to be trusted. Cities smoldered. The sky was orange with ash. I remember thinking that maybe, just maybe, this was what peace looked like. I was wrong. It happened 3 nights after the ceasefire. I was scavenging what was left of my family's home when I heard the sound. Not bombs, not gunfire, this was worse. A shriek that clawed straight into my skull. High, broken, inhuman. By the time I staggered outside, I saw shapes moving in the smoke. At first, I thought they were soldiers in scorched gear, their helmets melted to their skin. But when the closest one turned, its face stretched wrong, cheeks splitting like wax, eyes glowing like fire buried deep underground. His teeth weren't teeth at all, but shards of something jagged and black. They came in swarms, crawling, limping, sprinting, every shape of nightmare, all spilling from the craters and ruins the war left behind. People tried to fight. Guns rattled, blades flashed, but nothing stopped them for long. I saw a man shoot one through the chest, only for it to stumble, split open, and birth 2 more from its body. I ran. The roads were broken, but I knew the way. Everyone did. The bunkers had been a rumor during the war, whispered about when the weapons got too powerful, when we realized we weren't just killing each other but poisoning the world itself. They were supposed to be shelters for the chosen, but by the time the creatures came, they opened the gates for anyone who could reach them. The sky turned black with smoke and screams. I sprinted until my legs gave out, until my throat was raw with blood and dust. The shadows followed me, always just behind, their voices a chorus of agony. And then I saw it, the dome of steel rising from the cracked earth. The bunker, its floodlights burned through the haze like a promise. I don't remember pounding on the doors. I don't remember the soldiers pulling me inside. What I do remember is looking back one last time. The creatures had stopped at the treeline, not retreating, not attacking, just watching, and I swear, some of them were smiling. The soldiers slammed the steel doors shut behind me, and the sound echoed like a tomb ceiling. For the first time since the war ended, I felt a moment of safety, but it was thin, fragile, something I didn't dare trust. Inside, the bunker stank of sweat, oil, and fear. Hundreds of people pressed into the concrete halls, their eyes wide, their voices hushed to whispers. Families clung to each other. Strangers huddled in silence. Everyone knew the same truth. The war hadn't killed us, but whatever came after might. I stumbled to a corner, still shaking from the run. My throat burned, my chest ached, and every time I blinked I saw those faces again. Those things in the smoke, grinning like they knew something we didn't. The loudspeakers crackled overhead. A voice announced that we were safe, that the bunker was secure, that everything was under control. No one believed it. That night, when the lights dimmed, the scratching started. It echoed along the steel walls, slow, dragging claws scraping metal. The sound moved around the bunker, circling like wolves testing a cage. Children cried. Some people prayed. I sat awake with my hands pressed against my ears, but it didn't help. By morning, the scratching stopped, but we all knew what it meant. The creatures hadn't left. They were waiting. The days turned into weeks. Food was rationed. The air grew heavy. Rumors spread through the halls like infection. Some swore the creatures weren't outside at all, that they had already gotten in. Others whispered that the war itself had made them, that the bombs had split the earth and spilled nightmares into the world. I wanted to believe the bunker was enough, that steel and concrete could keep us safe. But every time I closed my eyes, I remembered that night. Their shapes in the smoke, their glowing eyes fixed on me, and those smiles felt less like they were hunting us, and more like they were waiting for us to break. The days bled into each other. Time didn't feel real in the bunker. Without sunlight, without seasons, there was no difference between morning and night. Just the hum of the generators and the whispers of people who were trying not to lose their minds. But I could feel the change. The bunker wasn't breaking apart all at once. It was rotting slowly, from the inside out. The first signs came in the food lines. People started fighting over scraps, fists flying until the soldiers dragged them apart. Then came the sickness, coughs that spread through the air, fevers that burned too hot. The medics worked without rest, but half the time their patients just stopped breathing in their sleep. And then there were the sounds. At night, the scratching returned. Louder now, sharper, sometimes accompanied by a low moan that seemed to come from the earth itself. People covered their ears, but I listened. Couldn't help it. And I realized something, those sounds weren't random. The claws scraped in patterns. The moans rose and fell like voices. They were speaking to us. One night, I followed the sound down a corridor that had been sealed off. The guards weren't there anymore. No one wanted to patrol that section. I pressed my ear to the wall, and my stomach turned cold. The voice wasn't outside. It was inside. The wall vibrated against my skull. Every syllable a rasp of claws and broken laughter. It wasn't English, but I understood the intent. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. They were already here. I staggered back from the wall, my breath shaking, and I realized that everyone else in the corridor had gone silent. Dozens of eyes stared at me, wide and terrified, like they already knew what I had heard. The bunker had never been safe. It was only a waiting room, and sooner or later the doors would open one way or another. It happened on the 42nd day. The alarms tore through the bunker like a blade, shrill and endless, bouncing off the concrete walls until every ear rang. People stampeded in the corridors, children screaming, soldiers barking orders that no one could hear. I ran with them, though I didn't know where. The sound of the breach was worse than the alarms. A single metallic shriek, long and drawn out, as though the bunker itself was screaming. Something had ripped through the outer wall. The soldiers opened fire. The staccato of their rifles echoed in bursts, but there was no comfort in it, only terror. For every round fired, something screamed back. And those screams, they didn't sound like monsters. They sounded like people. I caught a glimpse before the smoke filled the hall. A shape crawling low, its limbs bent backward, dragging itself on hands that weren't hands at all but long, serrated claws. Its face flickered between features, sometimes a soldier's, sometimes a woman's, sometimes something that had never been human at all. When it turned toward me, its mouth split open from ear to ear. I ran. The crowd surged deeper into the bunker, toward the reinforced doors of the inner chambers. The soldiers slammed them shut once we were through, locking out everyone who hadn't made it in time. The pounding began immediately, fists and claws hammering against the steel. Some of those voices outside the door begged to be let in. Some cried for help. Some used names, our names. But no one moved. No one opened the door. When the noise finally stopped, the silence was worse. We all stood there in the flickering light, our breaths ragged, and realized the truth. The creatures weren't just outside anymore. They were already among us. The silence didn't last. We thought the inner doors would hold, but the bunker was never built for things like them. We learned that the hard way. The pounding started again, harder this time, every slam rattling through the concrete like the heartbeat of something enormous. The lights flickered, dust rained from the ceiling. Someone screamed that the walls were cracking, and then metal buckled. The first door gave way with a screech that drowned out every voice. The creatures poured through, not in dozens but in swarms. Their shapes twisted in the flashing lights, sometimes human, sometimes not. Their faces bleeding into one another like wax melting in fire. The soldiers tried to fight. Their rifles rattled until barrels overheated. Grenades shook the air, but nothing slowed the tide. The creatures didn't fall the way men did. They split, multiplied, or stitched themselves back together in the span of a blink. Panic tore through the survivors. People shoved, trampled, clawed to escape deeper into the bunker, but there was no deeper left. This was it, the end of the line. I remember the smell of burning metal, the sound of screaming, the blood slick under my hands as I pushed through the chaos. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I did, I'd never move again. Somehow I made it through, past the second barricade, past the blast doors that only a handful reached before they sealed for good. I never saw the ones who stayed behind again, but I still heard them long after, in the quiet hours of the night. Their voices whispered through the vents, scratching at my skull, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, sometimes begging. The war had ended. Humanity had survived. But in that moment, deep in the earth with blood still drying on my skin, I knew the truth. We hadn't survived the war at all. The war had only opened the door. Now, in the present, the memories still bleed into my dreams. It has been years since that night, but I can still hear the screams echoing in the steel. I can still see the light flickering as the bunker gave way. And I can still smell the rot of the creatures as they spilled inside like a tide that never receded. The bunker didn't save us, it only bought us time. The world outside rotted while we hid underground, pretending we were healing it, pretending there was still something worth saving. The facility grew from that ruin, rebuilt layer by layer, a fortress against the dark. We told ourselves we were survivors, builders, healers, but every time I stand at the edge of the treeline, every time I watch the shadows slip between the trees, I feel the same truth sink into me like a knife. The war ended, yes, but the world that followed was not ours anymore, and I can't help but wonder if it ever will be again.